Hey everyone, welcome to the RotoGrinders Morning Grind podcast. I'm your host, Stevietpfl. It's Thursday. It's October 12th. It is 2023. We're going to talk some football showdown slates here on today's podcast. It's Thursday, so obviously we're going to talk Thursday night football, game between the Broncos and the Chiefs, which should be a very interesting game, one-sided anyway. And then Sunday morning game across the pond with Baltimore and Tennessee facing off against each other, and then Sunday night football, Giants and Bills. So I feel like we have some lopsided games. These games are always super interesting when it comes to showdown, and we're talking football. So we got Keith on with us today. Keith Eys819. Keith, the original plan was to talk some baseball because I thought some of these series were going to go a little bit longer, but that's not seeming to be the case. What are your thoughts here? Just overall on what we've looked at like the Braves Phillies series has been fantastic. Diamondbacks are beating the Dodgers 4-0 right now. Astros beat the Twins. So, I don't think that was too much of a shocker for anybody. Rangers sweeping Baltimore, I think, was probably the biggest shock for me of this round so far. Unless Arizona sweeps the Dodgers, that's two wild ones.
Yeah, for sure. I talked with you last week about that Texas-Baltimore series. I thought it was going to be a really good, tightly matched series. I definitely thought Texas had a chance. They're definitely a better team than what they showed all season long. They dealt with so many injuries, and their offense was just clicking at the right time, you could tell. But them sweeping Baltimore, I agree. That was quite a surprise. Just enough pitching left for them. Maybe they get Scherzer back for the ALCS here, which is obviously could be a huge boost. Texas looks really good. Obviously, Houston getting the job done. 7th year in a row, I believe they've been to the ALCS, which is just an incredible run. Good job by that front office, keeping that talent together. They obviously let a couple of guys walk, and Springer and Correa, but they kept the core nucleus together. Altuve's been there for all of it. Bregman as well. Jordan came up. Just a great core there in Houston. So that should be a really good series. They had a hotly contested series down the stretch as well when they were both fighting for the division. So that we could see some drama in that series. Two teams that don't like each other very much. Arizona is definitely a surprise as well. Up 4-0 on the Dodgers. Dodgers just ran out of pitching. We were talking about it a little bit pre-show. Lance Lynn, it's over for him, right? Just giving up 4 home runs in an inning, I think it was. Just insane stuff. Diamondbacks look like they'll get it done. And then Philly, Atlanta, the only other one remaining out there, which Philly gave it to Atlanta last year. So not a surprise, I would say, but Atlanta fading down the stretch is a little bit of a surprise, I would say.
Podcast that we did last week that you were talking about, I think we nailed it. I said Arizona would be the underdog that won. And you said Texas. So and my reasoning on that podcast last week was I think the Dodgers are just out of pitching. And Arizona has been an underrated team all year. If Atlanta gets knocked out by Philadelphia, the World Series is going to be interesting this year. The 4 teams that will be left, I will be rooting so heavy. I'm sorry ahead of time, by the way, for any of our Houston Astros listeners. I will be rooting so incredibly heavy for the Rangers just because that makes the World Series more fun than the Astros. Sorry. I'm on team fun. I would love a series where we get Philadelphia and Texas. That would be a phenomenal. But flip side of it, if it is Texas and Arizona, like the Rangers and the Diamondbacks, it's 2 teams that we talked about for the last 2.5 months of being underrated and in offenses that have just been phenomenal. So it wouldn't shock me. Statistically, it wouldn't shock me if it's those 2 teams that make the World Series. But baseball is fun, and this time of year is super fun for baseball. I'm glad. As a fan, I don't have anything to worry about because my team didn't make it. You're in the same boat.
Kind of a nightmare for the TV networks, right? There's no huge markets. Philly's a decent market, Houston's a decent market, but no LA, no New York. Ratings might be a little bit down for this year's World Series if Arizona can hang on here and knock off the Dodgers.
Yeah, but don't people get a little excited about an Arizona Texas? You go into World Series games
for sure. I'm excited to watch Texas beat Houston for sure.
Yeah, if Arizona, you gonna go? Like you gotta make a little trip there, Keith. Yeah,
Just hop, skip, and a jump away from me.
I know. All right. Enough baseball talk. Let's talk football. It is that time of the year. We'll have our full football breakdown on tomorrow's podcast, Friday's podcast, again this week, because of how basketball and everything is kind of played out. And a lot of people, Ron is like, I'm rooting for Texas now for Seager. A lot of people are like Texas believers right now because Corey Seager, and yeah, rooting for Texas as well. All right, let's start with this Thursday night football game. Obviously, this is the closest one here. We got, we're recording right now Wednesday night. Most people are going to listen to this Thursday morning. But, Thursday night football, we got Broncos and Chiefs 47.5. This game opened at 49.5. It's been bet down two full points. A lot of that has to do with some concerning weather. Kevin Roth, I know he wrote up a prop or I guess it was more of a game line on Scores and Odds, because like talking about the weather and how the weather could impact this game. So, baseball's getting close to being over, so now we got to start worrying about weather for NFL. But Keith, full morning grind, style. We'll start with Denver here against Chiefs. They have an 18.5 implied total here. Chiefs a 10.5 point favorite at home. Broncos are dealing with this running back situation where like Williams practiced fully towards the end of last week and then still didn't play. We saw a couple of big games here from the backup. If he is the backup anymore, I mean, it's like, what are we really expecting for Denver? I mean, what are you looking at here for the Broncos?
Yeah, I mean, like their offense has been competent this year. It hasn't been great by any means, but like there's difficult situations going on here. I believe Dulcich has a chance to return as well, which could even further complicate some things. But the backfield is the most interesting thing to me. And just because of the game script, obviously we expect Denver to be playing from behind here. Javonte Williams, even if he makes it back, he's fully priced up at 7,200. I have zero interest in him whatsoever. He hasn't looked explosive this season, coming off of, I believe it was an ACL injury. Now he's dealing with this quad injury that caused him to miss a game. And the third string running back, Jaleel McLaughlin, has just flat out looked better. So I'm far more interested in McLaughlin. It's like, just leave Javonte on the shelf for this one. I hope he's active, and I hope people want to play him, because I'm willing to take shots on the other two running backs ahead of Javonte Williams. McLaughlin has looked extremely explosive. He's had some big runs. They give him the ball down on the goal line as well. And then Pirine has kind of that passing game role where he can catch 4 or 5 balls. And on DraftKings, that's pretty useful. If he finds the end zone at 5,000 on a showdown slate, I'll play a little bit of Pirine. The pass catchers, it looks like Jerry Jeudy is finally back. He was banged up to start the season. I believe it was a knee injury that he was dealing with, but he got back on the field, had 7 targets last week, caught 6 of them. Still no explosive games from Jeudy, but we know that's in there for him. He is priced ahead of Sutton, which I think is good. That should help lower the ownership. But it really feels like the target share is starting to swing back in favor of Jerry Jeudy. So if they're playing catch up and throwing way more than they want to, I think Jerry Jeudy would be my main run back on Denver. And then I think Pirine is a sneaky kind of like negative game script type guy that could have a decent role here. Deep dart throws, I'm constantly going to keep taking shots at Marvin Mims. He's not playing very much. He's not cheap either, really, for his role. He's 4,600, and the guy has seen more than 2 targets in just 1 game this season. But he's a deep play threat. He gets targeted down the field. 40-yard touchdown reception is what you're looking for there. Don't love the price. Brandon Johnson is another guy who sees the field a little bit. He is cheap, 1,200. I don't hate him as a value play in a game that they should be throwing a ton. No thanks on the Broncos D, and we'll have to see how this tight end situation shakes out. Dulcich coming back from an injury is 3,200. I suppose that's fairly interesting. Probably no interest in Troutman for me. Just not a guy. He did earn some targets last week, but we saw 3 weeks in a row there where he just wasn't really involved. He caught the touchdown last week and did have 5 targets, but still only 26 yards. So I just don't think Troutman is that talented. If you're playing him on a showdown, you're just hoping that he falls in the end zone.
We talked about Troutman last week on the podcast. Well, I did, and you laughed at me, and I said the Jets give up a ton of fantasy points to tight ends, and
he got his touchdown.
He did. He had a long play that Wilson like overthrew him too. He should have had like 40 more yards. The one target he didn't catch was a bad throw by Wilson. That would have been like a 40-yard play. But hey, listen, I'm not here to gloat. I think Dulcich is really interesting. He practiced in full Wednesday. I expect him to get activated. It was a hamstring. Those types of injuries, when you're practicing in full, they usually activate you. So it'd be interesting to see. But I mean, with Dulcich back, no chance I'm touching Troutman. I think Dulcich is really interesting because, like you said, I think that Kansas City is going to put it on this Denver defense, and I don't think anyone can really argue that. So, like, that obviously opens up Russell Wilson, Judy, Sutton. But these secondary pieces on showdown slate are interesting. Guys like Dulcich. Mims is that home run play. I mean, that's what you're playing him for. His average depth to target is really kind of what you're looking for here. And I mean, even last week, he ran 12 routes last week and had 1 target, but it was a long target. So, like, you're just trying to get the home run ball from Mims. I mean, I'm with you on defense. No chance I'm touching this Denver defense. The running back situation, Piron's probably my favorite because I do think they're going to be trailing. I do think the opportunity for Piron is going to be there to get, 4 or 5 targets out of the backfield. And I mean, 4 or 5 catches, 40 yards. If he scores, he crushes. If he doesn't, he still has a chance to be the highest scoring running back. And I mean, I'm with you on Williams. I want him to be active. I think McLaughlin is the guy I would play over Williams, but I like Piron the most out of the 3 just for game script purposes here. If you're building a game script of like Denver getting up, McLaughlin would be the guy that I'd be looking at on Denver. Kansas City side, sounds like Travis Kelce going to give it a go here with the ankle. That's obviously a little concerning, but just an absolutely fantastic matchup. Denver is one of the worst defenses in the league. They have allowed 187 rushing yards per game this season and 281 passing yards. 5th most passing yards, most rushing yards per game. Their defense, DVOA wise, 32nd. Dead last for anyone that doesn't know. There's 32 teams in the NFL. Keith, obviously Patrick Mahomes, captain's going to be pretty popular here. It's where are you going to pair him with outside of maybe Travis Kelce? I think this is a fantastic spot for Pacheco. I think that they could rely on Pacheco, and he could have one of those 100+ yard, 2 touchdown types of games where Patrick Mahomes doesn't get there. So I think like playing Pacheco in the captain spot and not using Mahomes is something I might do a little bit here. Price wise, what are your thoughts on Kansas City?
Yeah, I like that Pacheco call quite a bit here. We know like this Denver defense cannot stop anyone. Maybe Kansas City tries to come out here and get Mahomes and Kelce right. It's been a little bit of a slow start to the season for him. If Mahomes wants to come out and throw for 400 yards and 4 touchdowns, he certainly can do that here in this matchup. The problem, like with the Kansas City game so far this season, is their defense is actually good now, which like Denver is going to have a hard time keeping up in this one, I think. So playing Pacheco and the captain, and even like the Chiefs defense is overpriced, no doubt about it. But I don't hate sprinkling them in a little bit. And I don't ever really play defenses on Showdown very much, but I think Kansas City could absolutely dominate this matchup. The weather is a little bit of a concern, like you mentioned as well. That's another knock to the Kansas City passing game. So yeah, I think Pacheco is my favorite captain on the entire slate, which is odd. Usually on Chiefs Showdown slates, it's almost always Mahomes or Kelce, or going back to the Tyreek Hill days, it was him. But since then, it's pretty much always been Mahomes and Kelce that are optimal captains in Chiefs victories on Showdowns. So Pacheco is an interesting one. I'll be interested to see where the ownership shakes out. I think he probably ends up under rostered compared to his chances to make the optimal lineup. And for that reason, he's my favorite captain. Obviously, you have to have some Mahomes exposure in the captain. The ceiling is just so incredible in this matchup. Kelsey is the obvious target if you want to play the fade route because he's dealing with the ankle injury, his second injury of the season already. I don't hate that route. He's fully priced at 11,000, so no discount there. But man, if you're trying to figure out where the targets are going after that, it's a scary proposition. Rashee Rice has been running a bunch of routes. We saw Tony get a little bit more involved. I think Tony at 4K is interesting. Just like in any, no matter how this game plays out, I think he's going to get some touches. And at 4K, I think that's a really nice price on Kadarius Toney. The other guy who we saw get a little bit of run, and he's only $600, is Justin Ross. He didn't play very many snaps at all, but he earned 4 targets. I don't have the exact snap share in front of me, but it was very low. But he earned 4 targets. $600. I mean, all he needs to do is catch a touchdown pass, and like you're printing it at 600. That's incredible. So I like him as a value option if you're looking to pay up. Like if you use Mahomes in the captain and you're pairing him with Kelsey, I think the way most people are going to do that is by playing some Justin Ross. Let's see here. Justin Watson is on the field a little bit. Like these receivers are so difficult to figure out for Kansas City. I think you need to make more than one lineup on this showdown is the way I play it. Like 20 entry max, I just sprinkle all these guys in. If I make a rule that if Mahomes is in my captain, I need at least 2 of them, and I'm fine going 3 and even 4. Like there's guys that are so cheap. I think you can play like Kelsey, Watson, Ross, and maybe even a 4th altogether if Mahomes is your captain. So definitely make sure you're forcing in some Kansas City pass catchers if you're using Mahomes in the captain.
I think, again, we talk about this all the time. I mean, I know you and I talk about this. I know a lot of people talk about this in general, but on the showdown slates, your lineup has to tell a story. If you're expecting Kansas City to get up in this game, then, looking at Kansas City defense is not the craziest thing. With Pacheco, Edwards-Helaire in a game where they get up is not the worst idea because he's just so cheap. So, because of price, if you're kind of expecting Kansas City just to absolutely dominate this game and Denver not really to show up, I have no problems playing Pacheco and Helaire together. Very, very rare for me to do, but he's 1,000 on DraftKings. If they get up in this game, 8 to 10 carries for Helaire is not crazy, and they'll be garbage time carries. So, I mean, as far as the passing game, you kind of nailed it, right? They literally use 6 or 7 people, and none of them are running last week. Just for an example, last week, MVS ran 26 routes. That was 60% of dropbacks from Patrick Mahomes. That was the highest on the team. The second highest was Sky Moore at 46%. Travis Kelce was 46%. Watson was 44%. Tony was 40%. When these guys are on the field, they have plays schemed for them. Rice ran 8 routes last week and had 5 targets.
Yeah.
We talked about Justin Ross. Justin Ross ran 6 snaps. He was on the field for 6 snaps. He ran 6 routes. He had 4 targets, like you mentioned. So when these guys are on the field, they are having plays drawn up for them. So, I mean, realistically, the touchdown threats are typically Kelsey, Pacheco, Mahomes. That's the guys but any of these guys can score from 15 out. They all play. So in a showdown slate, if you're a single entry person, this is one of the worst slates for you. I'm just going to say it because nailing the optimal build with Kansas City here is going to be extremely tough because they use so many people. So if you're a person that usually plays a $25 single entry, this might be one of those days you're like, all right, I'm going to fire up lineup HQ. I'm going to build 20 teams for the $1 20 entry max, because I feel like not always, Keith, not always, because I love single entry and 3 entry max stuff, but this is the type of slate where you're like, I probably want to get, and you could build around a core. I'm not saying, hey, I'm going to play 20 teams and I'm just going to play everybody. You can build around a core and just kind of sprinkle in these wide receivers because even Noah Gray could get involved in this game. So you can't even forget about Noah Gray because they use him in the red zone and down the field. So, I mean, just trying to nail the optimal is really tough here for Kansas City.
Yeah, I play a lot of 20 entry max. It's actually one of my favorite formats. It's because like I don't have to put in 150 lineups, but I still get many bullets into that contest, and I'm able to play with as many bullets as anybody else has in the contest.
Yeah.
You need to take a stand in this scenario. So if people are looking at MVS and Sky Moore and seeing that they're running the most routes, and for that reason they want to target them, I'll just completely X them out of my build, and I'll go way overweight on Watson and Justin Ross and Noah Gray, like you mentioned, those types of plays. Like you shift the field ownership. You go underweight on the guys who are catching some ownership. Tony is a guy who gets schemed targets and things like that. So I would have some Tony. I think Tony's probably the most popular Chiefs pass catcher outside of Kelsey, just because like he does get that work, and he's only 4,000. Sky Moore's priced up to 5,400. And he's not shown the ability to be able to earn targets. So I am completely fine with the Sky Moore fade at 5,400. MVS, he needs a 40-yard touchdown to burn me. The guy is out there. He just exercises out there, right? He runs the straight 9 route right down the field every time.
He opens up those small routes for Rice and Kelsey and Gray. Like,
yep, exactly. So I X out MVS, and I just hope that he doesn't catch the touchdown that burns me. And I play the guys like Justin Watson who aren't on the field as much. And hopefully I get a couple of receptions. If they find the end zone, then that's where we're really cooking.
All right. Before we go to our next game, the Baltimore-Tennessee game, let's talk either player props or pick'em projections. Let's give out a little pick'em 2-pick play here. I'll let you go first. I always write down 2, so maybe it's a 3 pick'em if we have different answers, because I'm going to give out my 2 no matter what. So what do you got for me, Keith?
All right, let's see here. I'm going to Jerry Jeudy in this spot. I mentioned the 7 targets, 6 receptions in the last game. I fully expect Denver to be throwing a ton in this game, down multiple scores. He's sitting at 4.5 receptions. He's hit the over on that in 2 of his last 3, and he's been banged up. I think he's the healthiest he's been all season, and this should be a perfect game script for him to catch a bunch of passes. Jerry Jeudy over 4.5 receptions.
Yeah, I'm in. Let's do it. I'll give out both of mine then, because that was not either of the ones that I had written down. I'm gonna go. And this line is steep, but I love this spot, and I think that he just absolutely crushes here. So I'm gonna go Pacheco more than 74.5 rushing yards. This team, like I said, they're allowing 180 rushing yards per game this season, highest in the NFL by I think like 40 yards. It's not close. It really isn't. So love this spot for Pacheco. The other one, I'm going to take the home run. If you're not comfortable with trying the home run play here, do a flex play. Try to get that 2 for 3. I'm going power play with this one. I'm going to try to get us a 5x here. I'm going to go Marvin Mims Jr. more than 17.5 receiving yards. It takes one play, Keith. One play. They're going to be trailing. This guy, when he catches the ball, he's already 25 yards downfield. I need him to catch one ball in a game that I am projecting for them to be trailing. So I absolutely love not even planning this out. We actually are correlating here. We're correlating a Denver game where they're trailing. Pacheco's up running the ball down the throats of Denver, and we're getting Jeudy and Mims as run back. So I'm going to go with a power play here. I'm going to throw this in there over there on Prize Picks. All right, let's go to Sunday morning. I almost said Sunday night, but Sunday morning football. Gotta love these showdown slates. This game is fun. And I'm not actually saying that because I think it's a terrible game. I actually think this game is fun. There are some showdown games where I'm just like, this game stinks. And we're going to talk about Sunday Night Football. That's a game that stinks. I think this game is going to be competitive. Hear me out. I feel like Tennessee is not the greatest team in the world, but they have pieces that can do well in a matchup against Baltimore and Lamar Jackson. I mean, he's Lamar Jackson. Like, this game's going to be competitive. Baltimore has been a phenomenal defense this season. Ryan Tannehill's been awful. So, I mean, is there a potential for a lopsided game? Sure. But Sunday morning game in a different country, and we're going to get competitive game, I'm hoping here. So let's talk about it. Baltimore, 4-point favorite, 41 total. Let's talk Baltimore first, because technically they're on the road. what are your thoughts here on the Ravens?
Yeah, so I think the first decision you have to make is what do you want to do with Lamar Jackson at captain? He has immense upside because of his rushing ability. So the field is going to play him at an extremely high rate. Are you on an overweight or an underweight stance on Lamar Jackson in the captain? Once you make that decision, then you can start building out the rest of your lineups. For me, I feel like I want to be a little bit underweight, and that's assuming that he comes in like 25%, 30% in the captain, as he usually does. These running quarterbacks generally get pretty popular. But I like his pass catchers quite a bit in this one. Tennessee, we know, is a pass funnel defense. Baltimore is dealing with injuries in the backfield. I feel like Lamar Jackson could throw for a bunch of yards in this spot against Tennessee. And if he does that, if it condenses around one person, even if Lamar Jackson runs for 60 yards and a touchdown, there's still a chance that a pass catcher could outscore him. Zay Flowers is the guy that I have my eye on as my primary captain. He has earned more targets than Bateman and Beckham whenever they've been on the field anyway. They've both been banged up early in the season. Zay Flowers is the best wide receiver on this team. I'm pretty sure of that. He's 8,200. It allows you to do some things as well. You save a lot of money playing him in the captain over Lamar Jackson. You can definitely fit some better pieces from Tennessee that I do like in the spot as well. This Baltimore defense is not scary. We saw Pittsburgh play with Baltimore. Like, I agree. I think this game's competitive. It should be a fun one, but I think my main stance is going to be underweight on Lamar Jackson and the captain, not because I think he's going to have a bad game. I'm just hoping that the production condenses on either Zay Flowers or Mark Andrews are going to be my primary two captains in the spot. Bateman has been injured throughout his entire career. He hasn't been able to stay on the field very much. He hasn't earned more than 3 targets in any game that he has played. And OBJ, I feel like, is just washed up. So it's the Zay Flowers and Mark Andrews show for me. Those are my two captains. Like, other like cheap plays I'm looking at, there's not a ton here for the Ravens. The Justin Tucker's always in play because he can nail him from 50 yards in his sleep. That's 5 points. You get 2 of those and 10 points from a kicker just on 2 kicks. That's in play for sure. I always love playing backup tight ends, but Isaiah Likely just does not have a role in this offense this season. And I think it's because of the presence of Zay Flowers. A lot of the times Andrews and Likely were on the field together last year. We just have not seen that this year. And it's, in my opinion, because Zay Flowers is so good. So give me overweight on Zay Flowers. I'll be overweight on Andrews and the captain, underweight on Lamar, underweight on Bateman and Odell Beckham.
Yeah. So, okay. Lot to digest. I'm with you on a lot of this. I'm with you on Zay Flowers probably being my highest owned captain play. I think he has a massive ceiling. I don't want to forget about Mark Andrews in this game either, because it's Mark Andrews and he has a massive amount of ceiling against everybody as well. So really like both of those guys a lot. Tennessee's been tough against the run. Lamar isn't the easiest matchup in the world, though. Like, he's going to get his rushing yards, more likely to fade the running back situation than I am to be underweight on Lamar. If I was going to play running back here, it'd probably be Justice Hill, because I think he's the best pass catcher out of the backfield, and I think it's just a tough matchup for just a pure on up the middle running type of game. I have mixed feelings about Nelson Aguilar's price. I feel like if he was 2,500, he'd probably be one of the highest owned players on the slate. The fact that he's expensive, he might go overlooked. He has a role, and like, he has this like weird red zone role. Like, we saw him in Philadelphia catch a lot of touchdowns and like have a role and be a phenomenal wide receiver. Well, I mean, who's to say like this guy hasn't taken over as like the number 2 guy? Like, I get like Odell Beckham is there. He's been banged up all season. Bateman ran 11 routes last week. Like, Nelson Aguilar was on the field. He was running routes. Like, I don't want to sleep on like this guy being very useful in this offense. So Mark Andrews runs so much out of the slot, so you're worried about Aguilar's like upside in that. But I mean, they have been running these like weird plays too, Keith, where they're like running like slants from slots from both sides and stuff. So I mean, they're just using these guys and they're using them well. And I mean, I think Nelson Aguilar large field tournament stuff is really, really interesting. Odell plays, I'm sure, with the ankle. I mean, flying across playing over in London, flying across the ocean here, and sitting on an airplane for all those fun hours that we all love, that's going to flare up that ankle a little bit. Anyone that's ever injured an ankle, sitting down stinks because you want to be moving. It hurts. Anyway, so I like the Tucker call. We should have mentioned in that Denver Kansas City game, I'm a little bit down on the kickers just because of Ross win prediction in that game. He's expecting sustained 15 to 20 mile an hour winds with 30 mile an hour gusts. I am going to be playing a little bit less kickers in that game, and it could even bump up the Kansas City defense a little bit for me. We should have mentioned that. So yeah, I mean, that's all that I got for Baltimore. I think Bateman is still a large field tournament play just because when he is on the field, Lamar does target him. It's just 2 or 3 times. All you need is a touchdown. It's a showdown slate. You're really just trying to hunt touchdowns on showdown slates. You're not playing a guy like him in the captain spot. You're playing him in the flex, trying to get one of the touchdowns. So yeah, I love Flowers and Andrews. Tennessee, probably my favorite captain play on the entire slate is going to be DeAndre Hopkins. We talked about him last week. I talked about how Indy is a funnel pass defense, and we should be playing him. I played him enough, but if I would have made lineups when we did the podcast Thursday night, he would have been one of my highest owned wide receivers. And I'm that guy that didn't remember to play a lot of him. I played enough, but he was on my main FanDuel team, which was always good. And I had him a lot on FanDuel because of his price. But man, just knew that he was going to have a big game last week. He did. And I mean, I love this spot for him. They should be trailing in this game, and he's their best player, him and Derrick Henry. So I don't necessarily love the spot for Derrick Henry, so I'm going to go to Nuke. I think Hopkins has a big game, and I think you're going to talk about Okongwu. You're going to talk about Spears. I know you. They're interesting plays for sure. Talk to me here about Tennessee.
I'm actually completely with you. It's DeAndre Hopkins all the way for me. Part of that is because of the price on Tyjae Spears and Chig Okonkwo. If Okonkwo was 3,500, I would have interest, but he's up at 5K. We did finally see him earn a bunch of targets last week. He had 9 targets after we've been kind of waiting. I think Chig is really talented, especially as a pass catcher, but he just has not been productive this season. And part of that is Ryan Tannehill. Spears price up at 7,400. I absolutely love the role, but that's a big price to ask for. And he's been a little bit more than a third down back. They have definitely integrated him into this offense. He's taking away usage from Derrick Henry. I still don't love the price at 7,400. That said, I don't want to fade him, especially if I think Baltimore's playing from ahead. He's the guy that's going to be out there catching the checkdowns. We've seen him have 4 targets in 4 out of 5 games. He had 5 last week. So he does have that pass catching role that is so valuable in these DraftKings showdowns. But 7,400 is not a price that I like to pay for that role. I'd much rather that be 5,500. It's Hopkins. Hopkins is the guy. There's a chance that Treylon Burks could come back, but we haven't seen Treylon Burks really do anything. He's coming off of an injury. That doesn't scare me whatsoever. DeAndre Hopkins is clearly the alpha here. I totally agree. You can captain him. Same thesis as Zay Flowers. He could catch 10 balls in this spot, especially if they're trailing. Even if they're ahead, I think he could catch 10 balls if Henry can't get off the ground. And if Henry's going to be the more popular captain on the Tennessee side, give me all the Hopkins. There's these options. If Treylon Burks plays, get really, really scary. Westbrook-Akine has had a role the last couple of weeks, but I feel like that's mostly because Burks has been out. He becomes pretty unplayable, I think, if Burks does make it in. And it's not like Burks is super cheap. He's up at 5,800 as well. So I don't love the pricing on this Tennessee side. That's part of one of the reasons that I think Justin Tucker is going to be a big part of my build this week. And I don't generally build with a ton of kickers, but I think he has as much upside as these secondary Tennessee guys. We know it's going to Henry. He's going to get his 18 to 20 carries most likely, assuming the game is close enough. Hopkins, I think, is in for a massive target share. Yeah, so that doesn't leave a lot left for guys like Okonkwo and Burks and NWI. So I feel like I'm just going to load up on as much Hopkins, and my builds are going to lean Baltimore heavy. Even though I think it's going to be fairly close, I probably can't afford Henry in a build like that, and he's definitely going to get game scripted out a little bit if I'm building for Baltimore to play with the lead. We didn't talk much about quarterbacks. About Tannehill in particular. He's just been so bad. He does have a chance to throw he does have a chance to drop back a ton if they're playing from behind in the spot. We've seen 45 dropbacks out of him in the past. He hasn't done it yet this year, and he's played really poorly so far this season. But this Baltimore defense, I think, has an issue. So I'll play with as much Tannehill as I can fit. He's not a priority for me, though. Give me Nuke all the way.
As everybody sees, I'm wearing a Dolphins hat. Tannehill's never a priority. I will say, like, as far as like Chig goes, I'm with you. I think this guy is uber talented. He disappears a lot. Baltimore is allowing the fewest fantasy points per game to opposing tight ends. They are very good against tight ends. They're very good in the middle, and they shut down tight ends. If you're building this type of script, I mean, you have to look at Westbrook or Burks if he plays. You could play these guys with Hopkins. Hopkins is still going to have a 28% target share. Like, that is his target share in the season. It's not going anywhere. Like, you could play these guys with Hopkins. Like, you can build a 4-2 and just play the two pass catchers you feel like are going to perform well. And that might be Spears. I mean, he's just expensive. Like you said, it's really tough price-wise. The one guy that I want to point out just as a large field tournament play, if Burks sits, is Chris Moore. He's $200. He is extremely cheap. He has been playing 60% of the snaps with Burks out. So if Burks sits again, he didn't practice Wednesday. It's not looking like Burks is going to play again. Never know this early in the week. But it doesn't sound promising for Burks to come back this week. Chris Moore could run 25 routes and not get a target. Chris Moore could run.
He did it last week.
Yeah, he could run 25 routes this week and get 4 targets. For $200, you could do worse because he is technically the third wide receiver if Burks is out. So it's very rare that we get a third wide receiver in a condensed offense that really doesn't use a lot of guys at this price. Spears is technically probably the third wide receiver. I don't hate Derrick Henry in this spot. I don't necessarily love him either. It's a love-hate relationship. He has been more involved in the passing game, since really kind of start of like 2 years ago. They started using him more in the passing game because when you have a guy like Derrick Henry, you got to get him in open space sometimes, and sometimes that's a little dump off out of the backfield. But I like the kickers a lot in this game. We talked about Tucker. I think Nick Folk on the other side of this game. I think Tennessee's going to be able to move the ball against Baltimore. I just don't know how many times they're going to be able to punch it in because Ryan Tannehill stinks. So I think this is a spot like Nick Folk just keeps doing his things. He's had at least 2 field goals in 4 or 5 games. He has double-digit fantasy points in 4 or 5 games. This might be a week we play double kicker, and I hate it, but you don't have to like it to make money. Just enjoy the money you make. So anyway, we have some pick 'em and player props out for this game as well. So let's I wrote down 3. I wrote down 3 for this game. For some reason, I have a weird feeling that I'm going to get crushed in this game, but I like this game. So I'm sure by talking with you, you have one of these 3. So we'll probably end up with a 3-player pick again. The Sunday main slate favorite defense, OS. We will talk main slate tomorrow. Keith and I will be back tomorrow, 11-game main slate, breaking each game down. A lot less time on each game because it's not showdown. All right, Keith. Sunday morning pick and plays. Let's give out some goods here.
I'm pretty sure this is one of the ones you got written down. Give me DeAndre Hopkins more than 54.5 receiving yards. He's the alpha in this offense. Baltimore defense is looking a little shaky, looking a little leaky. I'm expecting 10 targets in this spot. He had 140 yards last week. Whether Treylon Burks comes back or not, I still like this number.
Yeah, so I had DeAndre Hopkins more than 4.5 receiving receptions because I feel like that is just criminally low. He has at least 5 in every game this season, so a little low. But we'll go with. Listen, I already put in this 3 pick 'em with mine that I wrote down. So I'm going to take your Hopkins over 57.5, or more than 57.5. I'm going to go to Derrick Henry, baby. More than 10.5 receiving yards. He might only get like 3 targets, but I am building with Tennessee trailing in this game. He gets these targets, and they're high probability catches. And when you get Derrick Henry in a little space, I need 1 catch. So he has gone over this number in 4 or 5 games this year. The game that he didn't was against Cleveland, where Cleveland just stomped Tennessee. They beat them bad. So I'm going to go Derrick Henry more than 10.5, and then I'm going to go to one of our favorite plays that we talked about to finish out our love for the passing game of Zay Flowers and say more than 55.5. I like this one. I'm going to go a power play again, and we got 2 5Xs out there. Hopefully we can hit one of 2, but hopefully we can hit both of them because that'd be fun. That'd be a good start to Thursday and Sunday morning. That'd be a good way to go in the main slate. All right, Keith, we do not have a slate up yet for Sunday Night Football, but we're going to break this game down, just give our thoughts here on who we're going to be looking at. Obviously, we don't have pricing like I mentioned. It is the Giants and the Bills, 44.5. Buffalo, 14-point favorite in this game, and it might not be enough. We'll start with the Giants side. The biggest question mark by far when you're looking at this Sunday Night Football game is going to be, does Saquon Barkley play? That is the biggest question mark. Keith, give me your thoughts here on the Giants.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to know without knowing if Saquon's going to be active. He's just such a massive part of this offense. He would help keep this game a little closer. I still think the Giants get beat by double digits in this spot, even if Saquon does play. But this Giants offense just looks pretty inept without him. It's hard to like anything at all here. Wan'Dale Robinson's role has been pretty interesting. He's earning a bunch of targets. They're all right around the line of scrimmage. So you have to hope that he breaks a big play to find any sort of ceiling. But just the Wan'Dale Robinson role is interesting. I'll be curious to see where his price comes in. Darren Waller is a guy that I talked about a lot last week, and he had a very nice game. Unfortunately, I did not quite have enough of him on Sunday. But Darren Waller, I think, is in another good spot here. If Saquon doesn't play, I think he has to be heavily involved for them to have any chance of keeping this game close. So that's another guy I'm going to have a lot of interest in. We saw Eric Gray get really involved. If Saquon does sit, he did absolutely nothing with 12 rushing attempts. He averaged 2 yards a carry on 12 rushing attempts. But I just thought the role was super interesting. Like this backfield is a mess if Saquon Barkley does not play. So that's obviously the news we're keeping an eye on. I think Saquon, they're not going to put Saquon out there unless he's good to go. High ankle sprains are a difficult injury to come back from. But I think they've taken their time with this. And if he's active, I feel free to fire him up. We know he cannot get game scripted out. A trailing game script is just as good for him as a positive game script. He's going to catch a ton of passes in that scenario. Captain wise for Giants, you have to be looking at Daniel Jones just because of he can't throw the ball as much. So it's hard for him to bring receivers along. If Saquon is in, he would be my favorite Giants captain. If he is out, Waller would be my favorite Giants captain.
We should note the Bills are dealing with a ton of injuries right now. We'll have to kind of see how it plays out. I know they put Milano on the IR. White got put on the IR. Who was the defensive lineman? The really good defense, Jones. He's on the IR. Yeah. So they had a rough London trip. Jackson, I know, is banged up in another corner that's banged up. So like, as bad and like Kincaid, I think is in concussion protocol. So as bad as like the Giants offense is, the Bills defense is going to be dealing with some injuries. So it's like, all right, for showdown. Yeah. I mean,
they're also dealing with the London hangover too. Like that's not an easy trip coming back from
what
London.
Were they thinking flying out Friday? They looked exhausted in that game. Anyway, we even talked about that on the podcast last week. We're like, because we talked about Jacksonville having the advantage we're so smart sometimes, and it's like we should have bet like the money line
Yeah.
for Jacksonville. Like, what are we
For
doing?
sure.
Anyway, back to the Giants. I would be shocked if Barkley plays, to be honest. I think this is going to be another game he misses. It just doesn't sound like he's ready. And I feel like if you're the Giants, you want him back as fast as you can. But are you going to beat Buffalo? Give him one more week, and then try to make a push. And, I mean, I hate to say it out loud, but, I mean, you have Washington, you have the Jets coming up, you have Vegas coming up. Like, you have games you can win that are coming up to make your season, like, to turn around your season. Getting Barkley re-injured against Buffalo is tough, but if Barkley plays, I'll have interest for sure. If he's out, I love the Robinson-Waller combination. I'll be playing a bunch of that combo. I feel like they're going to be the guys. Outside of that, I mean, we really just witnessed this scenario of Giants falling behind in a game and playing from behind, and like Waller was the guy. Slayton had 6 targets. Hodgson had 1. Paris Campbell, it'd be interesting to see like what his price is. Like, he only ran 14 routes against the Dolphins last week, or no, not last week. Yeah, last week, right?
Yep.
I have the wrong thing pulled up. Hold on. I thought Paris Campbell was a thing. He wasn't. He had 12. He had 2 targets.
Yep.
I don't know why he was sticking in my head so much. Waller had 11 targets on 39 routes. He has to be your main play here from the Giants. And I will say, like, Jalen Hyatt had 25 routes run. It was the 3rd most on the team last week. He had 0 targets. But on showdowns, you're looking for opportunity. I would assume Jalen Hyatt is like a less than $2,000 player when we get the showdown slate posted. He might just be someone to like throw some darts on. It's like, to give you an idea, Campbell ran 12 routes, Shepard ran 9, Hodgson ran 13. This dude ran 25. So
I love that Jalen Hyatt call. That's awesome information. I know he did not earn targets, but talented player, talented rookie, still learning the NFL, growing every week. Like, I love the Jalen Hyatt call. Be very interested to see where his price comes in.
Got to be on the field to get targets. Sterling Shepard was on the field for 9 plays. I'm just saying. I'm just pointing out, like, just pointing it out. All right, Bill's side, just an onslaught, right? Like, the Giants defense not going to slow this team down at all. I think Josh Allen's going to be a really popular captain play, and I can't really argue it. He does spread out the ball, like, especially in the red zone. So, like, he is like a legit captain that could throw 4 touchdowns to 4 different people, and you need him to be your captain. If you're not playing him in captain, I think you're either hoping that James Cook has a big game, or you're just saying, hey, Allen's going to throw 2 or 3 touchdowns to Stephon Diggs, and I'm going to get my exposure through Diggs. If Kincaid is out, definitely bumping up Dawson Knox for myself, and I'm also bumping up Hardy as like because they like using Hardy in the slot when Kincaid's off the field. So if Kincaid does miss with a concussion, I think Hardy is interesting. Gabe Davis has been extremely active in the red zone, and I mean, he's someone you have to have in there as far as just looking at overall plays here. Yeah, it's a really interesting spot because, like, Josh Allen is a 4 touchdown type of quarterback that, like, yeah, we can sit here and say, hey, being underweight or fading him in captain is fun. But, I mean, it's the same conversation about, like, Lamar, except for Josh Allen is a better fantasy quarterback, probably a better quarterback in general. But Lamar is no joke. I don't want to sit here and, apples to oranges, but just really tough fade at captain spot for Josh Allen if you think the Giants can keep the game close.
Yeah, I think the interesting angle here is to play for the blowout. The problem is the Bills, like, Josh Allen will still drop back 35 times in a blowout. We've seen it for years with the Bills. And he has the rushing upside on top of that. So it is a very difficult fade. The other thing that makes it a difficult fade is you can't trust which running back is going to get the volume in a blowout. We saw James Cook get scripted out when the Bills were trailing. He did not have hardly any opportunities last week. Is he the guy that grinds out the clock if they're up 30 points? I'm not sure that he is. Maybe we should be taking a look at the backups here. Latavius Murray and Damian Harris. I mean, I think Murray and his goal line role Depending on the price, you need him to be around 5K, I think. But there's a chance he could score 2 touchdowns in this game. I would have a ton of interest in Latavius Murray if he comes in at like 5K on this showdown. Diggs is the obvious other upside captain. He's going to be expensive, over 10K for sure. But the upside is there. We've seen it a couple of times already this season where he can just put up those monster games. So if I was fading Allen, Diggs would be my favorite. Trying to get weird is hard because we know where the production is going most of the time. I haven't seen the rollout of James Cook where I would just feel confident making him the captain, thinking that the Bills are going to start running a ton, even if they're up 3 scores in this one. So I might even lean Latavius Murray over James Cook as a captain play. I don't think James Cook has the touchdown upside. The only way he could burn me is by running 2 touchdowns in from 20 plus yards out, I feel like. So I probably fade James Cook in the captain, try to get overweight on Diggs, maybe even with the field on Allen. And then maybe mix just a sprinkle 1 or 2 lineups out of 20. I would say Latavius Murray, maybe. I do like the Dawson Knox call if Kincaid is out. Just should open up the between the 20 stuff for him a lot more. We know Knox has a huge red zone role, but he hasn't been used as much in the middle of the field. I feel like without Kincaid, he would get that role back. I do like your Deontay Hardy call, or if it's not Hardy, it could be Trent Sherfield as well. But one of those 2 guys should bump up considerably if Kincaid is out.
I just want to throw out an idea. Like if you're not playing Allen or Diggs in the captain spot and you don't trust anybody on the Giants, could this be a slate where we play Buffalo's defense in the captain spot and it work out? I mean, do you think they have enough upside as a captain play? I mean, I definitely like them as like an overall play, but if we're worried about like James Cook and Latavius Murray kind of hurting each other, and like we have to remember, like they get down to the 1 yard line and you're like, who's going to run it in? Well, probably Josh Allen. So, I mean, is this one of those slates where like they're viable as a captain play, you think? I just wanted to like get your quick thoughts on that.
Most of the time, I would say on 90% of showdown slates, my answer would just be flat out no to this. I think this is a spot where they could completely dominate. We know Daniel Jones can make a lot of mistakes as a passer. He just turns the ball over a lot. He takes a lot of sacks. I think that it's viable. You obviously need them to score a touchdown. Their price is going to be way up. I think they're going to be priced higher than the Chiefs, who are at what were they at? 5,600, I think. We're probably looking at 5,800 for this Bills defense. I don't know. It might take 2 touchdowns at that spot or 8 to 10 sacks, which
or the Giants
both
just
of those
not
are
scoring. Like, I mean, like this is a legit, like the Buffalo Bills could shut out the Giants and I wouldn't be shocked. Like, I mean, I'm just being honest. Like if Barkley doesn't play, and I mean, Daniel Jones is banged up right now too. So like if it's a perfect storm, like I actually have more interest for what it's worth if Tyrod Taylor's at quarterback to play the Giants. I mean, just in general, because like he gives you some rushing upside. Like he would be one of my favorite plays on this slate, and like probably one of the reasons we don't have a Sunday Night Football slate yet is because they're waiting for some news to come out on Thursday as far as like Giants injuries. Because I mean, we know that Jones didn't practice Wednesday, so I mean, if Jones is out with this neck injury, Tyrod Taylor, if he was too cheap, would break the slate. So, pay attention to that news as well. Interesting, man. It's just an interesting game. And when you're done watching some Sunday football, you always want an interesting game. This might not be the game for you. All right. All right, Keith, we're going to get out of here. Yeah. Three football games. We spent a lot of time on these games. It's showdown slates. It's a first look podcast. That's what we try to do. If you haven't already, subscribe over there on the RotoGrinders Morning Grind YouTube page. We appreciate it. Hit that like button and turn on notifications. That way you know when we're going live. Bottom of the 6th, Arizona up 4-0 still. Could be a sweep. That would be crazy. Braves Phillies showdown slate would be fire because there's just been so many runs scored in that game or series, and Strider pitching tomorrow. You never know what's going to happen. So that'd be fun. But anyway, we'll be back Friday. Full breakdown of the main slate, 11 games this week for NFL. That's it. We'll see y'all tomorrow. Have a good one.